Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 13 of A Letter to the King. For those of you new to the series, A Letter to the King is my attempt to capture the PvP goings on the Euro PvP 1 server. And if we look at where the map was at the end of last week, you'll see that the Brits had pushed the Danes all the way off the south of Haiti. The Danes were still engaged in furious combat over here with the Swedes. The Swedes had lost a significant amount of ground to the French, and the French had made some headway into the Dutch, who'd previously managed to wipe them off the mainland. Meanwhile, the Brits had retaken the Cayman Brac and Georgetown from the Spanish, and we're now making, after pushing the pirates all the way up the coast here, we're now making good headway in trying to get themselves back to the Yucatan and their state of former glory. Meanwhile, the USA was moving into the Bahamas and giving the pirates a run for the money around the northern islands. Before I get stuck into this, I should just point out I'm somewhat exhausted. That's not because of my normal ablutions and parties and drinking over the weekend. I've just watched episode 9 of Game of Thrones, The Battle of the Bastards. Oh my lord. I need to lie down and a cup of tea, I think, after that. So I shall try and carry on, despite the toings and goings that I've just watched in Thrones. So in our own battles and our own wars amongst the houses, we saw somewhat of a stalemate this week between the Dutch and the French. And I have heard there is a little bit of discussion of peace. I don't know if it's broken out. I did see a few flags pulled and fall. But I think they may have exhausted themselves somewhat on this flank. And what that allowed the French to do is push the Swedes completely out of the centre of the Antilles here, really just leaving the half a dozen, I think about 8 ports around Gustavia. And as much as we saw a bit of a stalemate between the French and the Dutch, we saw a similar stalemate between the Danes and the Swedes. Now, there was nowhere near as much action going on here as there has been the last couple of weeks, and this gave the Danes a bit of a breather. Player base is quite low for PvP 1 right now. It's probably half what it was only a month ago. And there's not many nations, in fact there's probably no nation now that can really succeed on 2 fronts or even 3 fronts. The Danes suffered terribly when they were in a full-blown conflict over here with the Swedes, and that allowed the Brits to crush into Haiti off the south. But with resistance petering out from the Swedes, this has given the Danes the opportunity to regroup, and they managed to force the Brits back all the way to really just the spit of Haiti. Meanwhile, the Brits did manage to push quite successfully into the pirate holdings on the west coast of Haiti, and they've pushed the pirates out of ports they've held for months. Pirates did come back a little bit towards the end of the week, but nonetheless, this is the first time these ports have changed hands in at least a couple of months. But this didn't happen for free for the Brits, because again, as I've mentioned, fighting on 2 fronts is proving beyond every nation at the moment. And the Spanish took the advantage of the fact that the Brits were committed over here, and they managed to retake the whole of the south side of Cuba. And this actually, interestingly enough, leaves the Spanish in probably the best position I think they've been in so far, and since I've started covering the toings and goings with A Letter to the King. And indeed, the Spanish made more hay while the sun was shining, or while the sol was shining. The pirates were pushed out of the Bahamas, so the north has fallen completely now to the Americans in a pretty significant resurgence. And the pirates are struggling, and it's beginning to get a little bit ugly for the pirates, because they are closing in on some of their primary PvE grounds. And the front line, so the pirates historically used to do a lot of harassing off the coast of Florida and a lot of harassing around here, although this has been in Spanish hands for a while. And now the US has really begun to push in, and the glove is on the other foot. Um, and the pirates are struggling up here, and to be honest, the main pirate clans are really operating in this neck of the woods at the moment. And they're having to make a choice: do we defend here, or do we defend here? And they're stretched and they're struggling. While this was going on, the Spanish made hay, and they retook Cayman Brac and Georgetown, and these two ports. They're probably bilingual by now. They change hands pretty much every week. So we'll see if they flip again. The Spanish did lose Satsuma. That was retaken by the Brits, but they picked up these two ports here. Meanwhile, the pirates got a jolly rogering, with the Brits mounting attack after attack after attack and pushing the pirates out of a fair number of ports across the basin in the Bight here. Some great PvP going on in this neck of the woods. It might not quite be 25 on 25. It tends to be sort of 15 on 10 and 12 on 8 and the likes. But there's great battles going on in the ports. There's great battles going on after the ports. I had just last night, I think we had a 7 on 7. It was almost evenly matched. The fight lasted, I think, about an hour and 10 minutes. The pesky pirates kind of claimed the honours on that open world battle at its close, but it was something like 3 pirate ships survived, and 5 or 6 Brits were sunk, and 1 or 2 escaped. But really good fun combat, and even though our numbers are a bit low at the moment, there's still plenty of good PvP to be had. You have to get involved. There's still a fair amount of folks who just potter around their home counties and don't really get themselves involved too much. But there's lots of good PvP to be had if you can pick your time zone, hook up with the clans. And what you're finding now is that it's no longer a single dominant clan. Pretty much every nation is relying on combination groups. I was in a port battle in Belize, I think, midweek, and I think there was 5 British clans combining to work together. And I know that there was at least three pirate clans that were opposing us, and a couple of Lucy's. So there's there's not the dominance you had before of 1 or 2 clans, and that isn't all bad. That means nations are having to work together a lot more. And so if you're just a single player, or it's just you and a mate, and you're hanging around your home counties a little bit, and you've never really got involved before, kind of now's a good time. Your nation needs you. So you'll know who the regulars are on your server. There's in your nation chat, there's always 1 or 2 sort of port battle regulars. Tap them up, help them out, and get involved, because there is some great fun to be had. It's only pixels you're losing if your ship gets sunk. That's what they're for. And there's nothing quite as thrilling as being in a PvP, and it's down to the last 2 or 3 ships, and you're one of those ships, and one half of your hull's gone, and you're almost shipping water, but 2 of the other opponents are in worse situation than you, and if you can close with one of the guys, and so on and so forth, it gets quite exhilarating, to be honest. There's quite a few new tactics having to be developed in the shallow water ports. We fought a number of shallow water battles over the weekend. I think somewhere around here, I think is Utila, and I can't remember, one of these is shallow water. And the little ships, they can't shoot the towers down. Their cannons just bounce off the towers, And it's not a ruffle stomp capping exercise either, because if you take in a Mercury, even if you're with golden hammocks, you and the tower are on even numbers when it comes to the capping activity. Now, it's AI, so it's a bit derpy, so you will win, but while you're fighting the tower, your ship's literally like a shag on a rock. And if there's opponents in there, they can just pummel the pants out of your ship, or even steal your ship and then leave you stuck in the tower. Of course, if you jump back in your ship and sail away, they can cap the tower for free and retake the tower, and you get a little bit of ring of roses where you're taking one tower, you go to the next, your opponent retakes the tower you've just capped. So people have to get quite smart in shallow waters now, and probably for the first time there's two new valid tactics in shallow waters. So the mortar brig is just brilliant in shallow water port battles. If you now, it's very hard to aim with a mortar brig, so I'd certainly recommend using the Pelot sights and the highest upgrades you can get, the mortar brig handbooks, to improve your aiming circle and your dispersion. But if you can land a shot right on the top of the circle of a tower, right in the middle, you will decimate its defences. One hit we saw took a tower from 200 Marines to about 60. Another one, half the number of Marines on there, and that makes life a lot easier for your mateys in their boats, who in the shallow waters, they're struggling even to get grape through the windows. And capping, although you can do it if you know what you're doing in the shallow water boats, it does lose you some crew, and then you become a target for the opposition to cap yourself. The other thing that we've discovered in both shallow and deep water is if you have a fire ship and you get set on fire and you sail it next to a tower and then you explode, you obliterate all the crew on the tower. And I don't know if it was a freak thing, if my matey was just a bit close to the tower, but his ship exploded, killed all the Marines in the tower, and he seemed to auto-capture the tower. So those Talablan tactics, they seem to work in port battles. And I'm also seeing a lot more fire ships just in combat in general. I've seen Ingermanlands and Consties and frigates sail themselves into port battles and nuzzle up against the enemy, get themselves caught on fire, and they can take 2 or 3 ships out. Now, they don't necessarily sink them, but they can certainly knock the crew down to a really sort of to a pointless number where you might be trying to sail a Connie with 110, 120 crew. And an interesting thing is the fire ships with the higher based mods on, they can actually, and I don't like this myself, but they can actually survive the explosion. And then if you've got a decent set of pumps and perhaps a toolbox on there, you can make yourself half operational. You might not be much help in the fight, but you might be able to recap an empty tower, or you might just be able to sail away and escape, or repair yourself and at least just keep the BR up. So there's plenty of new tactics going on in the port battles. It's a lot more fun to some extent than the 25 Santamissima dread fleet that just parks itself in a regional capital and you can never get the bugger out. Back to the report. So the Brits really did give the pirates a slapping. So it wasn't so long ago that the Brits were around this neck of the woods here, Great Corn, and then they've pushed themselves all the way back along the coast. That's not Great Corn, that's Great Corn. Pushed themselves all the way back along the coast up from Honduras. They've been getting stuck in to the pirates, and all of these timers were captured by the dirty Australian clan that went pirate. And when they took these ports, they set them on Aussie timers. And although it's been Aussies taking them back, a lot of the ports have been set on European timers, and this somewhat rankled the pirates, which I think was part of the fun of setting them on those timers. But also the Brits, by setting them on those timers, allowed themselves to steamroller forward as the pirates operating on those time zones were really fighting in these arenas over here. But the pirates spoke to their slave wives, the Spanish, and invited the Spanish to come and play, and come and play they did. So it was only a few weeks ago where really it was the pirates who were helping the Spanish out. But now, with the pirate numbers so diminished, the pirates invited the Spanish into one port here, Tenerife or something, Tenerife, sounds about right for Spain. And straight away on the next night, the Spanish freaked in and captured 3 or 4 Ruatan and what's that down there? Placenta, we call it. I'm sure that's not his proper name. But now the Spanish have a toehold in here, which means all those Brit ports on the European timers are now under threat from the Spanish. And equally, we quite often find that the Spanish will screen for a pirate attack, or that the pirates will screen for a Spanish attack. So the Brits really are in a bit of trouble because they're fighting now on 3 flanks. They've kind of lost this flank. They're fighting here and they're fighting here. Now the Spanish to somewhat extent are stretched, and the pirates are stretched, but it's still a 2-on-1. So I think the ruffle stomp that we've seen the Brits making over the past few nights might come to a bit of a screeching halt. But in saying that, it's all good stuff because there is loads of PvP going on around here. And the other thing, I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see the French make a move to the east soon. They've almost done their job over here. I suspect peace is going to break out with the Cloggies, unless the Cloggies get themselves together. The Swedes, they've fought themselves down to these last 8 islands, and it becomes hard to attack someone when they're down to 8 islands. You know, there's nowhere where the Swedish fleet can't get to within 10 minutes, or 15 minutes if the wind's bad. So it wouldn't surprise me to see the French maybe go in for a couple of leapfrogs to just join in the general brick kicking that might go on around here. So let's have a little look at the tally board. First of all, let's have a look at where we think the Biffo is going to be next week. So this for me will be the main centre of attraction, I suspect, here. And Haiti in general. Haiti in general is just a battleground at the moment with the Brits and the Danes and the Brits and the pirates. The marriage between the Spanish and the pirates seems an unbreakable bond at the moment. I think the Brits are going to struggle to put any real lean on the Spanish at all. They might snaffle at these ports for a few days. Whether or not they'll hold them, I don't know. I'm not quite sure where the Spanish are going to go from here, because they're up to the parents' doorstep here, so they might push in for the first time we would have seen in a long time, if ever, into Haiti, or they may focus all their venom down in the bight between North and continental South America. How will the pirates fare against the Americans? Because the Americans are giving them a jolly good slapping in the bananas. And they're starting to get very, very close to pirate PvE town. Maybe the Spanish will have to help the pirates out over here. It's strange talking about the Spanish helping the pirates when it was so much the other way round only a couple of weeks ago. The Swedes are in trouble. I think they might need to sue for peace pretty soon. That'll free the Danes up. So really, the Ring of Fire is where we're going to see most of the fighting. I think the Brits are going to get exhausted a little bit, to be honest. And then the outbreak in the Bahamas. So what did it all mean? The pirates carried on with their amazing loss-a-thon. 15 more ports fell. The Spanish really winners of the week. The only nation capable of growing on 2 fronts, pushing into Cuba and into the Honduras area. The British made a loss despite great gains in one area. They lost a lot of ports in Haiti and they lost all the ports in Cuba. The French held their own on both fronts, and for the first time I saw a bit of French gang squads sailing around, so they're getting their feet back, the French. The Dutch made a single port gain. I think basically the French took one off the Swedes and the Dutch took one off the French. The Americans, they grabbed up 4 ports, which is the balance of some of the ones that the pirates lost. The Danes had a good week, recapturing a lot of Haiti and giving the Swedes a spanking. And the Swedes are down to 8 ports. So after a resurgent period a couple of weeks ago, the Swedes are in right trouble. We know that we're not getting the next patch until it'll be after episode 14. I think it'll be the Tuesday after episode 14, the Tuesday or Wednesday. The next patch is very exciting. Of course, it's got fishing, and we're all looking forward to fishing. I think with fishing, my understanding is they're going to be bringing in whaling and adding the Japanese nation and science experiments with the whaling there. So that should be interesting. I'm looking forward to see what the officers do. I'm very excited about officers and the variety they might bring to the way you can build out your ship and have some different emphases on ship build. I'm a bit of a crafter. I make a lot of ships. I was furiously building Ingerman lands for my clan this week. I'm not such a big fan of the fleet capping. I want there to be value in the crafted ships. So I know the fleet ships are all just 1 Joras, and maybe the cost of crewing them will be interesting, or the pain in the arse of sailing them back to port might be interesting. But I'm not the biggest fan of fleet capping. I thought the AI fleets were good enough. You can have some great fun in the AI fleets and you can earn loads of money in the AI fleet. So I don't really need to cap the ships. Maybe it'll be an easy way for me to get an Indian in because I can't be bothered crafting up the traders. I've got my Pavel blueprint this week, so I'm all excited about building a couple of Pavels. Because that's a video I want to make. I think it's a beautiful ship, the Pavel, and it's a great capping ship for knocking over the first rates as well. What else is common in the new patch? The crewing stuff, the sailor mechanic. That's going to be very interesting. Again, my own personal jury is out on that one. I think it's good to move the cost of a ship away from purely building it and buying it into the maintenance of a ship. But I just hope it's some realism that doesn't sort of spoil the fun and make it too hard to maintain your PvP and your fleeting, so you have to sail back to port and wasting sort of an hour per mission, as it were. And of course, lastly, they've got this thing which I think will affect Letter to the King. They've got the 7-day lockdown. When you take a port, it's yours for 7 days. So I guess that will make ports more precious. But there's a lot of folks who think unless they make some other changes with it, I think I'm with them on this, unless they make other changes with it, just a 7-day port lockout will help a steamroller because you won't be able to counter flag once they've sort of breached you. Now, if they did something really lovely like take away flags, or take away, maybe not take away flags, it's good to know someone's going to attack a port, but take away the cost of flags and take away port timers, so you can pull a flag whenever you want. That might be interesting. And then in another couple of months we'd get the modifications to make the port battles themselves more interesting, with perhaps 2 and 3 stages to capture a port. Anyway, we'll see. That's enough of my prattling. So we've got another week as it is. We've got another week with our numbers straining a bit, to be honest. Quite often when I'm on in the Aussie time zone, you're running around with between 250 and the weekend maybe 500 folks online. And I was in a run the other day. We had 23 people going to take a port, and then we suddenly realised on us that was like 15% of the player base. So yeah, let's see how they go. But that's it for Letter of the King, the 13th episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and I will see you on the oceans, and I will catch you.